Have you ever noticed how the most intelligent, most reflective, most aware people around you seem to be silently disappearing? It's not that they are physically dying, but it is as if they are withdrawing from the world, moving away from superficial conversations, empty debates, endless social networks. They are there, but they are not there. Present in the body, absent in the soul. And maybe you are one of them. Maybe you've noticed that the more you understand about life, about people, about this complex and contradictory world we live in, the more you feel like withdrawing from it. Albert Camus, the French-Algerian philosopher who taught us about the absurdity of existence, would have a lot to say about this modern phenomenon. He understood, like few others, the profound loneliness of those who see beyond appearances, of those who can no longer be satisfied with the easy answers that society offers to complex issues. Lucidity, this ability to see things as they really are, without the comforting filters of illusion, has always been a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it frees us from the collective lies, the social fantasies, the self-deceptions that keep most people in a bubble of artificial comfort. On the other hand, it condemns us to a specific loneliness, that loneliness of those who can no longer participate in empty conversations about the weather, about celebrities, about the latest trends on social media. It is the loneliness of those who, when asked how they are, cannot respond with a simple fine, because they know that this word does not encompass the complexity of what it means to exist in this world. The lucid ones carry the burden of perceiving the fundamental contradictions of human existence, of seeing how society works, based on well-structured hypocrisies, how people live lives that they did not truly choose, following scripts written by others, pursuing goals that they do not even know where they came from. Camus talked about the feeling of the absurd, this sudden realization that the world doesn't make sense in the way we expected it to. He described that moment when we wake up one day and look at our routine, at our relationships, at our dreams, and realize that all of this could just be an artificial construction, a theater where we play roles that we don't always consciously choose. For most people, this moment passes quickly. It is drowned out by the next day's commitments, by the practical demands of life, by the need to continue functioning within the system. But for the lucid, this moment becomes a permanent perception, a lens through which they begin to see everything. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you realize the absurdity, you can no longer go back to lost naivety. Imagine yourself at a party where everyone is having fun, laughing at jokes that aren't funny, talking about topics that don't matter, pretending to be people they aren't. You are there, but it is as if you are watching from the outside, as if you are an anthropologist observing the customs of a strange tribe. You try to participate, try to get involved in the conversation about the latest reality show or the traffic problems, but your words ring hollow to yourself. You realize that you are acting, that you are wearing a social mask, and this bothers you deeply. Not because you are better than others, but because you can no longer believe in the representation. The lucid develop an allergy to superficiality, an almost physical inability to participate in conversations that do not touch on the fundamental questions of existence. And because most social conversations carefully avoid these fundamental issues, they end up withdrawing, preferring silence to participation in theater that seems absurd to them. This withdrawal is not an act of arrogance or superiority. It's an act of self-preservation. Lucid people realize that their mental and emotional energy is limited, and that spending it on superficial interactions is a form of violence against themselves. They prefer chosen solitude to forced company. They prefer to read a book, walk alone, reflect in silence rather than participate in conversations that leave them even more empty than they were before. And modern society, with its excessive value on sociability, networking, and constant presence on social media, interprets this withdrawal as a pathology. You need to go out more. You need to meet people. You're isolating yourself too much. But the lucid know that it is not isolation, it is selection. It's not misanthropy, it's saving vital energy. Modern technology has exponentially amplified this phenomenon. Social media has created a global stage for superficiality, where people compete to see who can present the most edited version of their lives. The lucid look at this spectacle with a mixture of fascination and horror, like someone watching an accident in slow motion. They see people creating characters of themselves, living for likes and comments, basing their self-esteem on digital metrics created by algorithms designed to be addictive. And the more they understand about how these systems work, about how our attention is being traded, about how our data is being used to manipulate us, the more they feel the need to step away. It's not Luddism, it's not fear of technology. It is awareness that participating in these platforms without critical reflection is accepting being transformed into a product. The Lucid also realize the deep contradictions of modern capitalism, how we are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us to consume our happiness, to buy our identity, to outsource our well-being to products and services. They see how the economic system needs us to be eternally dissatisfied, always wanting more, always feeling like we lack something that can be bought. And this perception makes them unadapted for a society based on compulsive consumption. They can no longer believe that the next purchase will solve their existential problems, that the next upgrade will fill the void they feel, that the next experience will finally make them happy. This disbelief in consumption as a solution to life's problems automatically places them on the margins of a society that works exactly on this premise. Camus wrote about Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a mountain for all eternity, only to see it roll back to the foot of the mountain each day. For Camus, Sisyphus represented the human condition. We are condemned to repeat seemingly meaningless tasks, to pursue goals that seem eternally unattainable, to construct meaning in a universe that seems fundamentally purposeless. But Camus did not see this as a tragedy. He saw it as an opportunity for revolt, for the creation of one's own meaning, for the affirmation of life even in the face of absurdity. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, he wrote, suggesting that we can find dignity and even joy in the very act of carrying on, even knowing that our stone will always roll back. Modern lucid people are like conscious Sisyphus. They see the stone, they see the mountain, they understand that they will have to repeat the process infinitely. But while Sisyphus had no choice, they do. And many are choosing not to push the stone. They are refusing to participate in games whose rules they consider absurd. They are withdrawing from competitions they consider meaningless. They are saying no to a society that demands their active participation in its own alienation. It's not depression, although it may seem like it. It's not giving up, although it may sound that way. It is a specific form of Camusian revolt, the refusal to accept as natural what is merely social convention. This refusal manifests itself in several ways. Some lucid people choose alternative careers, escaping traditional corporate logic, preferring jobs that make sense for them even if they pay less. Others withdraw from social networks, preferring more intimate and authentic relationships to superficial and numerous connections. Many people develop a different relationship with time, refusing to speed up indefinitely, preferring to do fewer things in more depth than to do many things without reflection. They cultivate contemplative hobbies, reading, writing, hiking, gardening, meditation, activities that cannot be optimized, that do not produce measurable results, that do not generate content for social networks. And maybe you recognize some of these behaviors in yourself. Maybe you've realized that you'd rather stay at home and read than go out to social events where you'll have to make empty conversations. Maybe you've noticed that you seem increasingly out of place in work meetings where everyone pretends they're doing something profoundly important when they know they're just another cog in the machine of late capitalism. Perhaps you've noticed that your friendships are becoming rarer, but also deeper, because you can no longer maintain relationships based solely on physical proximity or social convenience. I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Like you're watching a movie where you're the protagonist but you didn't write the script? Share in the comments the moment you realized that you saw the world differently than the people around you. This feeling of awakening to the absurdity of existence is universal among the lucid, and knowing that we are not alone in this realization can be deeply comforting. Let's create a community here of people who are not afraid to look reality in the eye, even when it is not comforting. Lucid people also develop a complex relationship with hope. They are not necessarily pessimists, but they have developed an allergy to naive optimism, to those motivational messages that promise that everything will work out if you just believe enough. They know that life is fundamentally uncertain, that suffering is inevitable. that death is the only guaranteed destiny for us all. But instead of despairing over these truths, many learn to find a different form of hope, a hope that doesn't depend on guarantees, that doesn't need promises of a happy ending. It is a hope based on the human capacity to create meaning even in the face of absurdity, to find beauty even in impermanence, to love even though we know we will lose everything we love. This perspective makes them unadapted to a culture that sells cheap hopes, that promises quick solutions to complex problems, that insists on seeing suffering as something that can and should be eliminated from the human experience. The lucid understand that suffering is an integral part of existence, that trying to eliminate it completely is a way of trying to eliminate humanity itself. They learn to live with existential angst instead of trying to cure it, to embrace uncertainty instead of running away from it, to find meaning in their own search for meaning, instead of waiting for someone to hand them an instruction manual for life. The removal of the lucid from society is not just an individual loss, it is a collective loss. These are the people who question, who reflect, who do not accept ready-made answers, who ask the uncomfortable questions that no one wants to hear, but that need to be asked. When they withdraw, society becomes a little poorer intellectually, a little more conformed, a little more willing to accept the unacceptable. It's a vicious cycle. The more superficial society becomes, the more lucid people feel alienated from it. The further they move away, the fewer questioning voices are left to challenge the increasing superficiality. But perhaps this withdrawal is not the end of the story. Perhaps this is just a phase, a necessary retreat before a new type of engagement. Camus talked about revolt as a possible response to the absurd, and perhaps we are seeing a new form of revolt forming. Revolt through withdrawal, the refusal to participate as a form of resistance. The lucid are not necessarily giving up on humanity. They are refusing to accept this specific version of humanity that is being offered to us. They are creating alternative spaces, smaller but more authentic communities, different ways of living that do not depend on the approval of the majority. Some are turning to ancient philosophy, rediscovering the Stoics, the Epicureans, the Cynics, thinkers who once faced these fundamental questions about how to live well in a world that seems hostile to the contemplative life. Others are exploring non-dogmatic spiritual traditions, practices that help them find inner peace without requiring them to believe in absolute truths. Many are simply learning to be more selective with their energy and attention, treating them as precious resources that should not be wasted on activities that do not add meaning to their lives. The loneliness of the lucid is real, but it is not necessarily permanent. When they learn to accept their difference instead of trying to correct it, when they stop forcing themselves to adapt to a world that doesn't make sense to them, something interesting happens. They begin to attract other people who also feel out of place, who also question the basic assumptions of modern society, who also prefer depth to surface. Not many people, but they are the right people. And the quality of that connection makes up for the amount of superficial connections they lost when they withdrew. Camus taught us that we do not need to wait for an external savior, for a social revolution, for a structural change in society to begin living according to our deepest values. We can start now where we are with the resources we have. We can choose authenticity over conformity, reflection over reactivity, quality over quantity. We can become living examples that it is possible to live differently, even within a system that seems to leave no room for alternatives. The lucid ones who are disappearing into silence may not really be disappearing. Maybe they're just becoming more selective about where and how they appear. Perhaps they are creating a silent counterculture, an invisible network of people who have chosen depth over surface, contemplation over compulsive action, quality over quantity. And perhaps, by making these individual choices, they are planting seeds for a broader transformation, a change that starts from the inside out, a quiet revolution that happens one person at a time. If you've subscribed to this channel, you're probably one of those people. You probably feel that you don't quite fit into the world as it is organized today, that your concerns are different from the concerns of most, that your questions are deeper than the answers society offers. And this is not your defect. It is a precious quality that must be cultivated, not corrected. Join us here in this community of people who are not afraid to think, to question, to live more consciously and authentically. Lucidity is not a curse, although it may sometimes seem like it. It is a gift, an awakening, an opportunity to live a truer life. Yes, it comes with the price of occasional loneliness, of misunderstanding, of feeling like an outsider in your own culture. But it also comes with the possibility of deeper connections, a more meaningful life, a more honest relationship with oneself and the world. Camus showed us that we can embrace the absurd without despairing, that we can find joy even in the absence of absolute certainties, that we can create meaning even in a universe that seems indifferent to our efforts. The lucid ones are not really disappearing. They are transforming, evolving, finding new ways of existing in a world that doesn't yet know how to deal with people who think for themselves. And perhaps this is exactly what the world needs. People who refuse to accept the status quo as inevitable, who keep the flame of critical reflection alive, who prove through their lives that there are other possible ways of being human in the 21st century. The silent withdrawal of the lucid is not the end of a story. It is the beginning of a new narrative about what it means to live a conscious life in unconscious times.